Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, President Trump is firing back after the EU slaps a $5 billion fine on Google. How this could further escalate trade conflicts between the U.S. and the EU. Plus, Grab's super app ambitions. How the Southeast Asian ride-hailing giant went from taking out Uber to taking on Tencent. And Zuckerberg backtracks. The Facebook CEO's comments on Holocaust deniers has people once again debating free speech on the social network. But first, to our top story. President Trump is weighing in on the record antitrust fine the EU slapped on Google. The president took to Twitter saying, quote, "I told you so. The European Union just slapped a $5 billion fine on one of our great companies, Google. They truly have taken advantage of the U.S., but not for long." Google CEO Sundar Pichai responded to Wednesday's fine in a blog post saying this decision rejects the business model that supports Android, which has created more choice for everyone, not less. We intend to appeal. Joining us now from London, Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde, and with us here in San Francisco, Bloomberg Tech's Mark Bergen, who covers all things Google and Alphabet. So, Mark, what do you make of these remarks from President Trump? Is this about America first or Europe last?
Some could interpret it, say, as an indication of Trump's policies on antitrust. There were some, after the EU fine, there was some sense that this is perhaps, there have been calls to have the DOJ and the FTC fight similar cases. This seems to be a little less calculated than that, right? This is largely around his opinions about Europe and tariffs and escalating that tension. It is interesting that Oracle and News Corp, who have been two of the largest complainants against Google in the European Union, have strong ties to the White House and have been known to lobby. So clearly, either they're not being effective in sort of their anti-Google lobbying, or something else is at play here.
Now, according to Politico, Caroline, Trump has claimed that Margaret Vestager, the EU competition commissioner, hates the United States, and in a G7 meeting with the European Commission chief, he said, the president said, reportedly, your tax lady, she really hates the U.S. Now, in the press conference, Caroline, that you attended, Margaret Vestager responded to what the president reportedly said here. Take a listen.
I've done my own fact-checking on the first part of that sentence. I do work with tax, and I am a woman, so this is 100% correct. This is not correct for the latter part of the sentence, though, because I very much like the U.S.
Caroline, was the EU prepared for this kind of backlash from the United States and perhaps directly from the president?
I think she was. I mean, she refrained herself from saying fake news, but generally this is a woman who has had plenty of criticism that she targets US successful tech companies. Some claim that she does this to in some way put Europe on a fairer footing, or indeed push back the dominance of these US tech companies. But when I asked her directly, look, are you expecting any sort of criticism from Donald Trump, she dodged that question, trying to focus on the similarities, trying to focus in on the fact that they have shared views in terms of really that the customer comes first. But what she is saying is that no, she doesn't in any way have an issue with dominance of Google in the EU, as long as they play by the rules. That's her key takeaway. But she felt that they've had illegal behavior, and that's why they face this $5 billion fine. But overall, I think she had been prepared for some sort of a critique. She said these are not her personal feelings as to why she's gone after Google. This is not a moral mission, is what she particularly said in that press conference as well. She's saying, look, this is because they broke the rules. But I think she did obviously anticipate, amid this era of political tension, that this would antagonize #1 Donald Trump.
Mark, reaction from Google on this yet?
Not anything publicly. I think
it's good news for them, though.
It's weird news. I think for the past 2 years, they've been very hesitant. I know I've talked to people internally that to come out in positions like, for instance, around the president's immigration policies, Google was clearly opposed and had a lot of people inside the company. They were very cautious to come out as the sole company against that, in part because they didn't want to get a a tweet from the president. And now they get their first tweet. Google's positioning themselves, Sundar Pichai, the CEO, as a very sort of global ambassador. They clearly don't want this image of like being behind U.S. protectionism and being, so that's the sort of policy stance that they want.
Now, Caroline, Google says it intends to appeal. As it stands, who are the winners and losers in this moment as a result of this decision, if it stands?
If it stands, if they have to change their business model, and indeed they've got 90 days in which to do that, if they have to take Google search off automatically of, for example, your Samsung phone, well then maybe Samsung starts to win because of course they're developing their own AI, they want to potentially bring their own search tools, maybe they start to win, maybe the likes of Bing, which is owned by Microsoft, starts to see more pickup, because this is what's interesting. When this has actually already been deployed by Russia. Russia last year ruled that Google had been, again, breaking antitrust laws by inserting Google Search and Google Chrome within Android smartphones. And since then, since they've been forced to offer on Android platforms Yandex or Mail.ru, you're starting to see a pickup in other rival search firms. In particular, you've seen Yandex go from about 30-something percent, 36%, all the way up to 42% in terms of market share. This does shift the dial. And so we could see more movement to different search engines and therefore slightly less advertising dollars going Google's way. So it'll be interesting to see how much of an effect it has. Many feel, though, that this is too little too late. And in fact, when you've got more than 90% search dominance, then there's not much that can shift the dial, really.
Mark, is there any truth in the president's claim that the U.S. is being taken advantage of by the EU?
That's been a position that some of the companies, and certainly privately, Google said that in the past, right? That there are no strong tech players in the EU, and rather than competing on a level playing field, the European regulators are basically taking this measure as a retaliatory measure. I mean, I do think that certainly Google can now point to the president's tweet and his public positions and say that, you know, we to Republicans that have oddly come out and attacked them, listen, the president's on our side in this position.
So who do you think wins? Is it the search apps, the browser apps that Caroline mentioned? Is it Samsung? Is it the handset makers?
Yeah, you know, one of the interesting criticisms of the EU is that they're sort of 5 years behind on this policy. At this point, Google's won the market. It's really hard to see rivals come out, not because of necessarily the policies from Android, but because Google's so far ahead in its position with very popular consumer apps and services.
All right, Mark Bergen, Bloomberg Tech, Caroline Hyde for us in London. Thank you both. Of course, we'll continue to follow the tweets. A story we continue to watch. Comcast has surrendered to Disney. It will no longer compete to buy a chunk of 21st Century Fox entertainment assets, but Comcast will try to win control of the British pay TV provider Sky. Disney can now go ahead with its $71 billion offer for the Fox properties, which include a 39% stake in Sky. It is unclear if Disney would be willing to sell that stake to Comcast. Coming up, grabbing a ride. How a startup dethroned Uber in Southeast Asia and now has its sights set on Tencent. We'll speak with the co-founder of Grab next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. Listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. When it comes to ride sharing here in the United States, the first two names that come to mind are, of course, Uber and Lyft. But in Southeast Asia, it is a different story in the battle for ride-hailing supremacy. That market is expected to grow to more than $20 billion by 2025, and one of the top names in the market is, of course, Grab. Since its inception in 2012, Grab first beat out and now bought out its former rival Uber's operations in the area, as it operates now in 225 cities across 8 countries. Now Grab is setting its sights on creating a WeChat-like super app encompassing everything from maps and payments to food delivery. Joining me now to discuss all this and more, the co-founder of Grab, Wheeling Tan, with me here in the studio. So great to have you here.
Thanks for having me,
in
Emily.
San Francisco. So did you have any idea that you'd be here in 6 years?
No, every year is a new journey. When we first started the company, our initial ambition was to solve safety for taxis in Malaysia. And since then, we've just grown from strength to strength.
So 225 cities, 8 countries. What is the outlook for future growth? How much bigger can the market be for you?
So we actually just launched Grab Platform, which is our strategy to grow from a transport platform and ride-hailing company into much, much more. It serves food, logistics, payments, financial services, and we want to become Southeast Asia's everyday super app.
Talk to me about the vision here. Grocery delivery is one of the latest new ads.
Yes, so last week we actually launched a partnership with Happy Fresh for Grab Fresh, which brings grocery deliveries to all of our users across 8 countries. And we think this is tremendous because, groceries are actually the highest average household spend for all Southeast Asian families.
Do you think you could do all of these things well, though?
So this is why we're very focused on a partnership-first approach, and that's a critical pillar in how we're launching Grab Platform. We want to bring together the best partners on board to leverage the assets that we already have. So to date, we have more than 100 million downloads. We serve more than 7 million drivers and agents. So we have the largest distribution network in Southeast Asia. And of course, the technology platform that has been built just for Southeast Asia.
So what new areas could we expect you to expand into? What are you considering?
So what we're focused on is everyday, not everything. So things like, of course, groceries. We've also launched a cycles platform with e-scooters and bicycle partners. And going forward, what I think you should not expect from us is things like massages or the ability to consign art a la WeChat.
And how do you guys make money in the partnership structure?
Yeah, so I think it's really different depending on what kind of business and what kind of services they're working with us. Our partners can partner with us on 3 types of methodologies. Like Happy Fresh, they're going to be fully embedded into our product. So the users will see Happy Fresh in the Grab app. So for that, they'll be using our services, a la payments, deliveries, and there will be a service fee there. There are also types of partnerships where we partner with e-commerce players where they use different parts of our technology platform where we can see Grab Pay and Grab Deliveries as part of the checkout. So again, there are different kind of transaction fee there. And the third one is for them to engage in our platform a la Grab Rewards, which is the largest rewards platform in Southeast Asia right now, and also our new news content feed where we launched a partnership with Yahoo last week.
Now, as you guys are expanding, Singapore's antitrust agency recently accused Grab of having monopolistic power in its home market. I know you've said you disagree, you plan to appeal, but how?
Yes, so for context, last week, the Singaporean government, or 2 weeks ago, they launched a preliminary announcement on some of the investigations into the acquisitions. Firstly, we disagree with it. And of course, there is a formal appeals process, which we're in the process of doing, where we're writing in officially to them, as well as having ongoing conversations. So net, if you step back and think about why this is happening, right? Of course, this was one of the largest transactions Southeast Asia has seen. And we're not surprised the regulatory bodies are doing their jobs because they want the same things that we do, which is for the best customer experience for the citizens of Singapore in a way that's pro-innovation and pro-business as well.
So do you think you'll moderate your strategy at all as a result of these inquiries right now? I mean, it's interesting to have the antitrust agency saying this at the same time that you're saying you want to be a super app.
Think about what we've been doing over the last 6 years. Over the history of Grab, we've been doing this consistently, where we're creating markets and building new businesses via technology that changes status quo. Now, because of that, every time we do anything that adds value, it's growing and it's changing, and it's building, in a way, disruption in a positive way. So all of our conversations with regulators to date have always been focused on, what we call a startup-like path. We work together to figure out how to deliver the best outcomes, but it always also takes a bit of time to figure out how to do it together.
Now, in the last year, Grab made a huge coup, getting Uber to swap its business in Southeast Asia for a 25.5% stake. That said, a merger between 2 former, very, very fierce rivals can be difficult. How is the integration going?
Actually, stepping back, it's actually been a fantastic experience so far. Of course, it's not been 100% smooth. Dara, though, now sits on our board. I actually just saw him 2 days ago in Aspen, and he's been a great board member. operationally, the integrations are going well as well. All of the drivers are on board our platform right now, users, and it's been pretty smooth relative to the size of the deal.
Now, when they did this with Didi, I never quite understood it. I mean, how does the communication between you and Dara work? Because Grab and Uber are still competitors in other territories.
No. So firstly, Grab is very focused in Southeast Asia, and Uber no longer operates in Southeast Asia.
So you have no plans to expand beyond Southeast Asia?
I think that it's important to understand that Southeast Asia is a huge market with tons of opportunities, right? Population-wise, Southeast Asia is the third largest in the world. It's larger than North America. It's larger than the EU. So there's a ton of growth opportunities, which is why we're moving into a platform play and to become a super app for Southeast Asia.
So what are some of the issues that you and Dara are working through? Give me some examples of, you know, the future challenges and the things that you discuss.
Actually, what we have been doing together with Dara is actually very much like him being a board member, like our other major shareholders. And he's been great at it. He's been able to bring the lens of being both an operator, a business partner, and now, of course, sitting on both sides, right? He gets to share what has worked at Uber, what hasn't as well, while he learns from my experiences as well.
Now, you mentioned that Grab was started to address safety, and a Grab driver was recently stripped and robbed in what was a harrowing sort of 12-hour ordeal. What are you doing to better protect drivers?
We're doing a lot. In fact, these incidents make us extremely sad because we know there's so much more that we can do, not just for passengers, but for drivers as well. So some of the recent things we've launched have been like emergency buttons, which are connected to local police enforcement. We've also started looking into passenger ratings, which historically were not needed. So net, I think it's really important to know that as the economy evolves, many different people are unfortunately taking means that are not great to earn an income. And we're doing what we can to make sure that we can fulfill the promise of becoming the safest platform in Southeast Asia. And right now we're 5 times safer than any alternative transportation, and we want to make it 0 safety incidents.
What's the value proposition to drivers, and how does it compare to Uber and Lyft and Didi?
So firstly, let me step back and share with you how our transportation platform is so different in terms of what kind of services you can get on it, right? In the States, you're used to, let's say, an UberX, which is a car service. In Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, right, we have taxis, we have cars, we have motorbike taxis as well, where you can actually jump on as a pillion rider to a small bike to weave through traffic. We also have 3-wheelers like tuk-tuks that you see in Bangkok. We also have shuttles, and we also integrate with public transportation. That's just on the transport side. So imagine yourself as a driver of a motorbike, right? You can pick up passengers, you can deliver food, you can deliver things, and now you can deliver groceries. That's significantly more income opportunities than they ever had before, even when they were just purely, let's say, contract workers.
So we've been talking a lot about the scooter market, and they've run into a lot of regulatory issues here in the United States. Are you running into those same issues in Southeast Asia, where all of these different new forms of transportation are popping up, but cities and countries aren't ready for it?
I think the good news for us is we've already been doing that for the past 6 years, and we've had a lot of successful conversations with our various regulatory bodies. For example, in Singapore, we launched with 100% oversight and agreement from the Singaporean government as a service called Just Grab, which enables us to give fixed fare pricing for taxis as well. So this actually overrides the taxi meter in Singapore. And if you think about what that means is that as a 5-year startup, when we launched this product, the Singaporean government said that we trust you enough to serve the citizens of Singapore in a way that was different than what the original taxi industry had done for decades.
We talked about partnerships. Are you interested in M&A? Are you looking at companies to buy to fulfill this super app vision?
So we've had already a few M&A, some of which are like Kudo, where we acquired, the millions of agents. We've also recently launched Grab Ventures, where we're hoping to help seed and start and support more startups like ourselves when we were younger, because we don't want them to have to go through the same pains and challenges that we did when we were trying to build a regional company.
So are there other areas, and if so, what areas where you see it's better to buy rather than build or partner?
I think we look at it on a case-by-case basis. What we do is, firstly, we identify growth areas, and then we try and figure out, are there partners that can deliver that with the right commercial terms in a faster, more efficient way? And then if not, then we make a decision on whether we build it or we buy it from someone else to continue building as well.
Masayoshi Son, speaking at SoftBank World in Japan, talked about how it's ridiculous that ride-hailing still isn't allowed in Japan. Is that a market that you would pursue if allowed, and do you see any potential progress there?
I think going back to the point that Southeast Asia has just a ton of opportunities. It's a market where we understand the customers. It's a market where we know what needs to be done, and we have lots of existing assets and partnerships to leverage. That's the market we're focusing. It's home. So folks always ask us about, Australia, Japan, China. We don't see the need to go there just because there's so much more to do in Southeast Asia. Some numbers. It's been quoted that the digital transformation wave is actually going to bring $1 trillion worth of impact to the economy in Southeast Asia. To date, the GDP in Southeast Asia is only 2.6 trillion. So think about how much more we can do together.
So it's been 6 years. Where will Grab be in another 6 years?
I wish I could tell you. But what I can definitely say, no, I don't think we'll ever be a Tencent. We used to be called the Uber of Southeast Asia, so I hope we don't get called, the Tencent of Southeast Asia. We want to be the Grab of Southeast Asia. And what we're super focused on right now is understanding what are the key everyday pain points, Grab platform becoming the everyday super app, and solving that in the best way possible with as many partners as possible.
Grab co-founder Huiling Tan, thanks so much for stopping by. Great to have you here while you're in town. Still ahead later this hour, is tech taking our jobs? A genetic scientist proves that it may actually be creating more opportunities. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network at TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. IBM won back some investor trust Wednesday after announcing second quarter earnings that beat consensus estimates. The computer and software manufacturer reporting a 2% revenue gain to $20 billion in the second quarter, while analysts estimated $19.9 billion. This marks IBM's third consecutive quarter of revenue growth after 5 years of revenue declines. The company views this as evidence of their successful transformation. However, other investors want to see improvements in cognitive revenue. Meantime, investors are worried that online marketplace eBay is losing momentum. The company gave a lackluster sales forecast for the third quarter and lowered its revenue forecast for the year. eBay is trying to find its place in the shadow of Amazon. Plus, brick-and-mortar retailers like Walmart are improving their own online shopping options. More when we return. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. There is a hot new business that more and more insurance firms are looking to get into, and that is crypto insurance. However, there aren't too many details on how this would work. On its face, providing coverage to crypto startups might seem borderline absurd. It's an industry with a well-deserved reputation for being like the Wild West, an unregulated digital frontier where frauds and heists are extremely common. But as cryptocurrencies and their underlying blockchain technology slowly gain broader appeal and acceptance, some insurers are betting they can avoid the pitfalls. Joining us now, BitPay Chief Commercial Officer Sunny Singh. Of course, there was a lot of money to be made in the gold rush, but there were heists and robberies and things like that. How would crypto insurance actually work?
Very true. Yeah. So BitPay, we take insurance very seriously. We've had our shares of ups and downs with insurance providers too as well. And we think it's a necessary evil. You have to have insurance. So especially with this type of money floating around. So in our last round, we actually raised a $40 million Series B round. We led it from Aquiline Capital Partners. And Aquiline is a large New York private equity firm focused on insurance. It's run by Jeff Greenberg, the former CEO of Marsh McLellan, as well as all their LPs are kind of the largest insurance providers in America. So we're working very closely with them to find the right insurance strategy, because again, most insurance companies are trying to learn how this works, and they're trying to making the rules up as we go along too. Right. And there's a lot of money at stake, so it has to be done the right way.
What about the risk they're taking on?
Yes, exactly right. And they don't know how to classify what type of security risk it is, right? How do you companies like Coinbase and them are holding a lot more money than BitPay does. BitPay doesn't hold consumer funds. So they have Coinbase, $5, $10 billion, whatever it may be. BitPay doesn't have that type of insurance risk, but we still have a lot of money that merchants were holding for and all that we're always at risk for, and you have to take that stuff very seriously.
What about the fear that some crypto companies, which have been less than transparent, might overstate the amount of insurance that they have?
Yeah, and that's something the consumers have to worry about, the regulators have to worry about. At BitPay, we spend a lot of time with the insurance companies, finding the right fit actually, and providing all the information to them. And that's why we also just got approved for the New York Bit license. Last week we announced that. And that's all about full transparency of your financials, your management team, and all that type of thing.
So what exactly does the Bit license allow you to do? The
Bit license gives you more credibility in the state of New York with regulators, with merchants you're trying to work with consumer money. We don't deal with consumers again, but we don't have to worry about that. But again, it gives you that stamp of credibility. The insurance and the regulators have looked at you and approved what you're trying to say and do.
Do you think insurance will invigorate the industry? Like, will the fact that there are some protections attract more investors?
Yes, I don't think it's going to invigorate the industry. I think the industry is already pretty invigorated. Mm-hmm. I think we're a 3-cycle curve here, so to speak. So last year I think was kind of the hype cycle, where it was all about excitement and hype and media frenzy. This year is all about realization, which is how do we build this product? It's actually here for real Bitcoin. Companies like Binance are doing a profit of $1 billion this year. It's no longer just a fad. And then next year I think you see adoption, where companies like Fidelity, BlackRock, Square, all enter this space in a big way, all have the right insurance, and all going to bring right products to the market that will create consumer adoption.
So how is demand for crypto payments now that the price has fallen so much? It's not recovering either.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to recover for a while right now until I think next year, when all these companies like Square and Fidelity launching this product where it's mainstream and people are using it now, versus just the rumors of a couple of days ago where the CEO of Goldman Sachs and anyone might like crypto, or Fidelity might do this, or BlackRock might do that. We don't want to hear mights anymore. We want to hear reality of what people are actually doing. And I think that you're going to see next year. And when Fidelity launches a custodian service, or E-Trade launches a new product with Robinhood, it's going to get mainstream adoption. Or Square launches a product where merchants can accept Bitcoin at all their merchants. You're going to start seeing people start to use it, and then you see the price, I think, break 20,000 again. So
is this the new normal, or is there still a lot of money to be made here?
There's still a lot of money to be made, but you got to look at more than just a 3-month horizon. You're going to still see your ups and downs 10% every day like you saw a couple days ago, and that just doesn't bother me because, again, I'm looking for a year out, and a year to see a 3-4x return, I think is very plausible right now.
So where are you seeing the most demand?
We're seeing the demand. All the merchants we talk to right now, don't worry about the price. They're all putting in crypto into the roadmap now to go live next year.
So what will the second half of the year for crypto look like?
I think you're going to see more of companies like Fidelity's in the world, again, have been planning and working with the regulators to launch an approved solution. And I think that's going to come out, you're going to start seeing end of the year, early next year, where the big incumbents start going after and competing with companies like Coinbase and BitPay now. And it's going to be pretty exciting to see all this mass adoption take place.
Sunny Singh, BitPay Chief Commercial Officer, thank you as always for stopping by.
Thanks again, Emily.
Well, German software giant SAP is betting big on its cloud business to take on rivals like Salesforce and Oracle. The company raised its 2018 outlook after second quarter results showed a boost in cloud services and solid growth in revenue. CFO Luka Music spoke with Bloomberg's Matt Miller. He says his company still has gas in the tank to maintain triple-digit cloud sales well into 2020.
40% cloud subscription growth at constant currencies was actually the biggest growth rate that we have enjoyed in quite a few years. And even if you discount the latest acquisition that we have been doing, which has been closing in beginning of Q2 of Calidus Cloud, which makes us now a very strong player in the fast-growing CRM market as well, we would have been growing in the mid-30s. So that organic growth machine is definitely accelerating, and we see great prospects also for the remainder of the year. That's why we have raised our cloud guidance by 100 million at the low end and another 50 million at the high end after having raised it already in Q1. So definitely momentum is accelerating.
The cloud business obviously is all the rage, Luca. I like the CRM business, and you've recently launched a new suite, right? C4. What kind of growth can you expect in that part of the software universe? And are you going to make any acquisitions, for example, to grow the business? Is it all going to be organic growth? How do you see that going?
Yeah, very good questions. First of all, on the acquisition front, we have made our major moves to round up our C4HANA value proposition. With the acquisition of Calidus, we can now really offer our customers an end-to-end portfolio in the CRM sales space with sales performance management, configure price quote solutions, which are perfectly complementing our organically developed CRM Salesforce automation solution. Next to that, we have done some smaller acquisitions to come up with a really compelling customer profile management solution. That was Gigia that we did towards the end of last year, which is really a differentiator because we can offer customers to really manage the profiles of their consumers in a data privacy compliant way across all of the channels of interaction. And we have made another small acquisition in the service management space, which establishes us as a credible player here in the cloud as well. So from that perspective, we have now the main assets that we need, and we see absolutely an exponential growth opportunity in CRM. This is the biggest software applications market. SAP so far has been underrepresented in it. We are breaking this out now as a separate reporting segment, so the market and you will be able to track our progress on a quarterly basis, and the growth rates there are spectacular. You can see that in the first half year, this business has been growing in the triple digits, and the commitment stands that you will continue to see this triple-digit growth for as long as we can look out into the future.
That was SAP CFO Luka Mucic. Well, LoanSnap launched the world's first smart loan technology on Thursday in an effort to make getting a mortgage faster and easier. The startup, whose investors include billionaire Richard Branson and former NFL quarterback Joe Montana, raised $8 million in a Series A funding round led by True Ventures. LoanSnap software pulls applicants' personal and financial information so it doesn't have to be entered manually, and runs continual compliance checks to avoid application bottlenecks. Customers can also get advice on financial decisions. Still ahead, one scientist solves a century-long problem for farmers. We will take a look at the future of gene editing next. And later in the show, Facebook CEO speaks out, trying to set the record straight over comments about Holocaust deniers on Facebook. We will discuss. This is Bloomberg. While concerns continue to rise over the risk of job automation, technology is also creating new jobs. Take gene editor Dan Carlson, who saw a need for his work in a unique group, dairy farmers. For years, farmers have been plagued by the tedious task of removing horns from their cattle, a process that's particularly painful for the animals themselves. Carlson seems to have found a solution. Bloomberg Tech's Aki Ito reports.
This is Burry. He might look like any other cow, but there's one little thing about him that sets him apart from his breed. Burry has never grown a pair of horns. And that wasn't a fluke of nature. Parts of his DNA were rewritten by this man. Using new tools in gene editing, scientists like him are gaining unprecedented control over the fate of all living things.
My name is Dan Carlson, and I'm a gene editor. Buckle up. The field is changing almost by the day, so new innovations, new techniques, gene editing technology, it's just going to improve our lives in a number of ways.
Dan works for a biotech startup called Recombinetics here in St. Paul, Minnesota.
So this is the embryology lab.
He's tackling a problem that's plagued farmers for generations. Most dairy cattle are born with horns, which they can use to herd each other and their human handlers. Because of that, worldwide, farmers remove horns from millions of dairy calves each year. It's a painful and distressing process for the animals. Dan wants cows to be born hornless and hopes to eliminate the practice of dehorning altogether. Dan's passion for farm animals stems from his childhood, growing up on this farm. It's run by his dad, who has a very fitting name,
This farm here is where my dad started out farming. I never dreamt that Dan would be a scientist. Gene editing sounds kind of science fiction to me, but I'm very proud of the work that Dan does.
I think they were hungry. For Darwin, dehorning cattle has always been his least favorite part of the job.
When they get their horns cut off, they holler like crazy, so you know that it ain't a comfortable thing that's happening to them.
So 6 years ago, Dan started working on developing hornless dairy cattle.
I was interested in trying to solve some of the problems that my dad encountered.
Using a gene editing tool that was discovered less than a decade ago, Dan's team took a dairy cow's cell, cut out the genetic segment that makes the animal grow horns, and then swapped in a sequence found in some beef cattle that makes them hornless. Next, his team created an embryo from the edited cell and inserted it into a surrogate mother. Then, they waited for 9 nerve-wracking months.
You're expecting it to come out without any horns or horn buds, but you just don't know.
Burry, the world's first cow to be gene-edited for hornlessness, was born in 2015 in Iowa. Shortly after, he was transferred here, to the University of California at Davis.
He's incredibly strong. I can see why it'd be dangerous to have horns on him.
Well, that's right. I mean, they kind of use their head as their defense. I mean, it's natural for them to do that. And obviously, when you have a 1,500-pound animal moving his head around like that, it doesn't take much to do some pretty significant damage.
Biologists are now pouring into the field of gene editing, coming out with new applications at dizzying speeds. If it all goes according to plan, much of it will change our lives for the better. But will there be unintended consequences? And how much tinkering with nature is too much?
Oh, you're getting some kisses.
Our answers will shape the future of Dan's profession.
Whether this strain of animals takes off, it's really up to the government and public acceptance. I can't do a lot about those things. I'm just going to do my job.
Bloomberg's Aki Ito there. Coming up, Zuckerberg clears the air. The Facebook CEO wades into the free speech debate once again. We'll discuss next. This is Bloomberg. When the tech companies themselves start raising alarm bells, you know we are facing serious issues with children's screen time and social media use. But the jury is still out as to how much time on screen is too much. And studies thus far have found conflicting information about how social media affects your child's mental health. Bloomberg Quick Takes explains what's at stake for our children's relationship with technology.
Are screens disrupting childhood? In short, yes, but it's complicated. The average age for getting a first smartphone in the US is about 10, and half of all American and British kids have social media accounts by the age of 12. Smartphone-wielding teens and preteens are glued to their phones, often using social media to share sensitive data about themselves during what can already be a tough time navigating puberty or adolescence. There are worries that screen time and social media activity can be addictive, and researchers say it can lead to bullying and depression. A recent survey reported that 22% of 8 to 17-year-olds said they had been bullied online. But there's a flip side to this.
There's certainly evidence to suggest that kids can use their smartphone for up to 2 hours a day. If you spend your time sharing positive information on social media, we can make people more happy.
That's Giles Turner.
And I'm the tech editor for Europe at Bloomberg. Just like anything, if you have a drink with your friends, it's great. If you carry on drinking for 12 hours, it's probably not so great. But it's the responsibility of the parents to manage that. Certainly many parents want to throw the phone in the rubbish bin and make their kids play outside.
And parents aren't the only ones sounding the alarm bells. A group of pediatric and mental health experts are lobbying Facebook to discontinue Messenger Kids, a version of its messenger app for children ages 6 to 12. Most platforms do have age restrictions, but its honor system is virtually impossible to enforce. After pleas from two of its major shareholders to address device addiction, Apple has recently unveiled a new feature to help people take control of their habits.
We know this is something that can help families achieve the right balance for them.
Meanwhile, experts still can't agree as to how serious a threat all of this is.
Most of the evidence is relatively new on whether social media is a good thing or a bad thing. You've got to remember that Snapchat was only founded in 2011. We all know how long it takes academics to come to a conclusion.
Like it or not, social media and screens are here to stay, putting concerned parents in a difficult bind. Letting children too young to use technology and social media run amok or risk isolating them from their peers.
Lots to think about as a parent. Speaking of social media, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has clarified remarks he made to Recode that appeared to defend Holocaust deniers. Originally, Zuckerberg told Recode that, quote, "I'm Jewish, and there's a set of people who deny that the Holocaust happened. I find that deeply offensive, but at the end of the day, I don't believe that our platform should take that down because I think there are things that different people get wrong. I don't think that they're intentionally getting it wrong." Zuckerberg then clarified his comments to Recode's Kara Swisher in an email saying, "There's one thing I want to clear up. I personally find Holocaust denial deeply offensive, and I absolutely didn't intend to defend the intent of people who deny that. These issues are very challenging, but I believe that often the best way to fight offensive bad speech is with good speech." Here to discuss Bloomberg Tech, Sarah Fryer, who covers the social network for us. So how did this even happen?
So Zuckerberg was actually trying to explain what Facebook does with people who deny the Sandy Hook elementary school murders. He was saying that in some cases it's harassment. Like if you are going to the victim, one of those parents of one of those children, and saying that your child was not murdered, that's harassment. That would get taken down. But if you're simply denying it happened, you might not be intentionally trying to harm anyone, and therefore Facebook won't take that down. And he tried to relate to this with the most unsympathetic example possible, which is the Holocaust, which you probably just shouldn't bring up in an interview on a sort of spontaneous podcast situation.
And his apology also doesn't quite sound like an apology. It's not a reversal.
Oh, Facebook has had this policy to allow people who deny the Holocaust to remain on Facebook for years. I mean, they've talked about it in 2009. This is a very common issue for social media companies because Holocaust denial is one of those things that you have to decide about really early on. It's illegal in Germany. So by saying that you are going to allow it to be legal elsewhere, you are making the distinction that your site is only going to take content down when it is absolutely necessary.
This is really fascinating, especially going into the midterm elections. Facebook has continued to deal with these questions of bias, these quote-unquote difficult situations. I recently sat down with President Trump's campaign manager for 2020, Brad Parscale, who ran the 2016 digital campaign. Take a listen to what he said about how influential Facebook was in winning.
I've been very specific that I think Facebook's how we won. In a lot of ways. I think President Trump won. I think Facebook is that 0.1% that delivered his message. I think if Facebook wouldn't exist, it would have been a lot tougher.
But he then goes on to rail against Facebook and other social media companies for liberal bias. Take a listen.
It's up to me to be a person as a leader in our party and someone that's running the campaign to make sure that those companies are held accountable, that they do everything they can to try to kill those internal biases and to provide an even playing field for this country.
In a way, Sarah, he's anointing himself the arbiter of what is and is not biased on Facebook, and he, of course, comes from his own political view. How is Facebook going to navigate these issues going into the elections? I mean, is anything going to be different?
Well, it's going to be a lot harder for Facebook to navigate these issues if they decide that truth is a matter of opinion. And that's sort of what is happening in the political spheres. People are just getting angry at Facebook for allowing content to be on there that they don't agree with. This company is really trying to deal with these people who say that they have anti-conservative bias. They hired a former senator to advise them on this. They're looking into it, but on the same side, you know, they have made changes to their algorithm that have benefited conservative commentators, maybe even more than mainstream news sites. And they've built this site that is a place where ideas on either side get more attention than the ideas in the center or ideas that are simply fact-based. So it's a tough situation for them. They can't make it too political.
Right. Well, it's evolving. Facebook navigating its way through all these thorny issues. Sarah Fryer, who covers Facebook for us, thank you so much. Well, a medical lab testing company appears to have been hit by a ransomware attack. LabCorp is dealing with a cyber attack from a strain of ransomware known as SamSam, this according to the Wall Street Journal. LabCorp handles millions of blood, urine, and other medical tests each week. Tens of thousands of LabCorp workstations, servers, and devices have been affected by the attack. The report says there's no indication of any data that was breached and that LabCorp plans to replace the affected devices. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. We'll see you back here tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.